Yes, we are live. Okay, welcome,
Epic.
welcome everyone.
Mm.
Episode 26, Flooded Cinema. And I'm joined today by plus Jack. Goes by many names. Call him anything, just don't call him late for dinner. How are you today, sir?
I am good.
That's good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm sure you're extra good because we're here to discuss two amazing movies. Um, Fight
Masterpieces of cinema, both. All right.
Yes. So, but before we begin, let me just actually share this so people will actually be watching it. Sorry, folks. Alright. So, we watched. I put it in the description, we're deciding what club we're going to join. Um,
Yeah,
at high
are we
school.
going this Suicide Club or the Fight Club?
Tough
It's difficult
decision.
to choose.
Yeah.
Commit
Uh,
suicide or beat the shit out of them.
mm. Um, Well, let's get into it. Fight Club. Pretty much, I mean, everyone's seen Fight Club. If you
Yeah,
haven't
this is a pretty
seen,
obscure movie. I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
this is probably the most mainstream movie I've covered on the show. Honestly, I must say,
I think so. Yeah.
I'm gonna lose my hipster credit. Um, Let me make sure I've got live chat. All right. Yeah, Fight Club. What do you think of it? What are your thoughts? Thoughts, feelings, just broadly speaking.
I think it's a genuinely great film. It's it. I would say it's definitely in the top tier of Fincher's work.
Yeah.
We talked about this before, but I really like Zodiac, but I like sort of true crime stuff.
Yeah.
So it's my liking of Zodiac more isn't based off any objective or technical qualities of the film. It's just I personally like true crime stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just everything in the film is it's all unified and it's all working together to create this atmosphere and tell the story of the narrator and Tyler Durden, because you've got the really bleak, boring sort of it's boring, but it's still dynamic enough to not lose your interest in terms of cinematography. It's boring in the sense that there isn't any bright colors anywhere. It's all
Oh,
grey,
it's drab.
almost a yeah, drab's the word, almost Matrix like in a way. How the Matrix has a green filter over it,
Yeah.
but it's not doing the same thing, but
No,
it
it's
gives off a similar to a degree appearance.
yeah.
Um, and something to note about is that choice of lighting and it isn't just lighting; it's set decoration as well. Isn't because obviously you get into the psychological aspects. That's never let up, and you could have done something where you would change the lighting, the color grade, and the set design for different states of the protagonist's mind.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that it is kept the same, and it serves to sort of unify it, and
Yeah.
it makes the world harsh no matter what, which I think is fits in with the idea of coming to terms with that fact very well.
Yeah. I think uh so I recently rewatched Seven as well, which is another Fincher
Yeah.
movie.
Hmm.
And I was honestly disappointed by it. I was like, "Oh damn, this is nowhere near as good as I remember it being." And then coming when we were gonna rewatch this, I was thinking in the back of my mind like, "Oh, this is probably not gonna. This is also gonna not hold up as well."
Hmm.
Um, but it exceeded my expectations. It's better than I even remembered it, honestly.
I would agree. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just on a surface level. It's an extremely sort of it's an edgy, fun movie, and like its edginess now has been sort of parodied to death. But
Yeah. It's
it,
been sort of subsumed by the culture, and yeah.
yeah, but even so, I think it still stands pretty well on its own 2 feet. It doesn't feel redundant or like
No,
cliche. It's still very fresh, I would say.
it became popular for a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
it genuinely tapped into a lot of the issues
Yeah.
young men, even older men, actually. Like, it's not unique to young men.
Yeah, yeah.
The issues that people were having in a post World War II or post Vietnam sort of everything.
Well, and
society.
particularly post Cold War,
Mm.
and also
Pre
prior.
pre 9/11.
Exactly.
Pre-9/11.
So that was the. I think I wrote this down. We'll just probably do this relatively slapshot, but as things come up, I was talking about the you couldn't even.
You couldn't have the building destruction. So.
No, but just even the themes about decadence and things like that.
Well, decadence is a good thing these days.
Yeah, you can't even have a movie about that. Like, you can't even talk about how things are nihilistic and lack meaning, because after 9/11, it sort of like basically restarted this sort of culture war.
The war on terror
thing. Yeah, yeah. And so,
the axis of evil.
Like, I'm trying to like, what's even an edgy movie that came out in the last?
A genuinely edgy one.
Like a relatively popular one. Because I'm thinking
there is Joker, obviously.
Yeah, Joker to a certain extent, but I'm thinking like, okay, we've got Fight Club, and then
Joker's in an awkward spot because obviously it got award recognition.
Yeah,
this Joaquin Phoenix won the Academy Award, but the press absolutely hated it. They despised that film.
I think because they understood that it was implicitly reactionary.
Yeah.
But no, I wanted to talk about how we have Fight Club, which addresses these sort of nihilism issues, and then like 10 years, well not 10, like 12 years later or whatever, then like Drive is sort of maybe the next sort of similar-ish movie. But the thing is, Drive,
Winding Refn, a few of his films are like that.
But the thing is, they're so drenched in
style. His stuff almost delves into it borderline self-parody of the genre sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, and I just think it's interesting because, in order to do something similar to Fight Club in terms of, I don't know, this kind of nihilism of the culture, you have to layer it in like all this style and everything to get away with it, basically, because you just couldn't make a straightforward movie about white guys feeling sad, basically.
Yeah.
And like, unless it's sort of, the solution is
be gay.
The solution is essentially feminize yourself, or essentially cut off your balls or something.
Come to terms with your toxic masculinity and femininity.
Yeah, something like that. As opposed to,
whereas Fight Club's is punch people in the fucking face and blow up buildings. Destroy the capitalist pigs.
Yeah, and I like that it's not ideological at all. And like, that's the irony, I think, nowadays, is a lot of these leftist Antifa people hate Fight Club, but, unironically, that, like, what do they do that these people would actually have issue with? And the only issue is that they're masculine men.
They didn't think about how it would impact women not to see them represented on screen. To be equal partners to the men in the film, alright?
True, technically there are no female characters.
Operation Mayhem is not very diverse.
It's just based in red pill people only.
Yeah. And annoying Jews from Band of Brothers.
Yo.
I love them.
Yeah, we don't mean that in any derogatory way. I
love them more.
Bro, have you on for one episode, you get my show destroyed. Alright, Fight Club. How do we even approach this? Because, like, everyone knows the story. I guess, what are things of interest? And then we can discuss my theory about Marla. Well, I guess what I like about this movie is that there's lots of different things and there's lots of layers to explore. Like, it genuinely talks about, obviously most of it is sort of about, there's nowhere for men to direct their masculine urges
Mhm.
of like conquering and defining their space and being warriors or anything like that anymore. And now because there's that great bit at the beginning where Brad Pitt is saying, "Do you know what a duvet is?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, why should either of us know what a duvet is? And
That's for women. Yeah.
yeah. And so
It's
uh,
it's it's one of the early critiques of the sort of late 20th, early 21st century feminized man,
yeah,
and the specific type of consumerism that was developing then, because you obviously had it before that, but it was what's the word? Almost metastasized, I think is the word, into the sort of current form of it, where
mm,
it's just buying garbage that you don't need.
yeah,
It's like you've got that great scene where Fincher literally he he depicts it. He shows you the catalog itself, and
yes,
then
yeah,
depicts it in the room. All the pieces adding up over time with their names, the
yeah,
tags, their prices, their descriptions, and
yeah,
it's developing that idea of your room is just this cookie cutter thing you've developed that almost looks exactly like these magazines.
yeah,
These aren't objects of personal value. These aren't things handed down to you for generations. These
yeah,
aren't things your family or a local community person has made for you
yeah.
from scratch. You know, these are mass-produced Scandinavian garbage that is you probably had to put together yourself with cheap screws
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
fucked up a couple times,
yeah,
and it's probably wonky, but it's from a nice catalog you picked up, and you know that
yeah,
other people also have that.
yeah. Um,
These days, if you want to do something like that, it would be a scene. What would it be? Something to do with Netflix. How could you do it? It would be like, people fucking talking about what random bullshit they've watched
yeah,
on Netflix. You could do something with TVs and your living room. I don't know.
yeah. Um, this movie reminded me a lot of as well. I think it came out. Was it literally the same year? American Psycho. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
basically like that nine. So that was 2000. So 1999, 2000. They had so many good movies come out. It's crazy. Um, but yeah, it reminded me a lot of that one scene in American Psycho where he's like, "Oh, we have to start." You know, what does he say? Like, "Oh, we have to start caring for the environment, increase conscientiousness and like civil involvement, etc., etc." And it's just like all these buzzwords.
Feeding the poor.
Yeah, 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 and it's sort of uh, yeah, like anything that is presented as having like so there's no inherent meaning to anything anymore, and then anything that is presented as having meaning is something that's being sold to us as well, basically. Um,
Hmm.
and it's not like I like the movie. It's not saying like, oh, we're just being sold this thing so capitalists make money, etc., etc., because that's sort of missing
Hmm.
the point. It's
Yeah,
uh,
that'd be cheap, as sort of spiritualist communist crap,
yeah,
which this isn't. It isn't Christian, obviously. It's like as we talked about this before. It's more in the. It's Nietzschean,
yeah,
but it's sort of in these non-Christian reactionary sphere, like your Bronze Age
yeah,
perverts, stuff like that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
that tier of
Very
reactionary,
similar sort of thing. Yeah,
very hyper masculine focus.
yeah. I find it interesting. So
Obviously.
yeah, and so the character finds meaning in basically the most visceral
Hmm.
things in life that you can't hide from. Like there's nowhere uh, you can't like disassociate yourself. It's not. It's like things that have like a certain immediacy to them. So he begins by going to these like support groups, for cancer and
He's
whatever
he's
else.
he's what's the word? He has been
Insomniac.
he's been an insomniac, but he's been sheltered. He has been feminized, and he doesn't have to go out and get his own food anymore. You know, he lives in a modern day city. He doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And he's been kept far away from the realities of the world. And it's this interaction with genuine suffering
Yeah.
that sort of snaps him out of it, in a way.
Yeah.
Because people are meant to experience suffering.
Yeah.
You know, but he's been completely. What's the word? I keep forgetting words today. he's atrophied essentially in a core part of his mind, in terms of being able to handle or just experiencing trauma in certain ways.
Yeah.
And initially, it's a parasitic feeding off of other people's trauma rather than an actual experience of it yourself.
Yeah. And then at a certain point, the parasitic trauma no longer gets him his kicks, basically. And so...
Especially when it is interrupted by someone who makes him face how parasitic he is. By Marl's character.
Yes, Marl's character. Also...
you know, we won't get into your theory yet.
Alright.
I don't want to get into your theory yet. I want to... You know.
Alright. Yeah, true, that will derail the conversation.
Yeah.
That'll derail the themes. But basically, yeah,
he's forced to confront his own parasitism.
Yeah.
You know.
And then so his solution is basically to go through a certain kind of like visceral suffering himself, which he gets in the form of fighting Brad Pitt. Yeah.
Yeah. Because what happens is that it is, you know, obviously it's presented as a random explosion, but obviously you find out later that he actually did it himself.
Yeah.
But all this material crap that he has, this meaningless IKEA garbage, is literally just destroyed.
Yeah.
It's a hard reset for him.
Yeah.
And he moves to somewhere that is run down, but it has this real quality to it. It's an older house that would have been actually built by someone.
Yeah.
You know, actually built by a skilled worker, a labourer, a carpenter, rather than the awful sort of postmodernist concrete structure we were living in before, filled with IKEA crap.
Yeah, it's not
even if it is run down, it's real.
Yeah.
A real physical object built by someone with a name, most likely, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, so he sort of just discovers this sort of completely undirected asceticism, and I think that's sort of where, I don't know, perhaps because the movie is relatively self-aware of even all these things he does are sort of futile themselves, you know, to a certain extent, because it's not really directed at anything. It is just, you know, it's just mayhem. It's just chaos. Yeah. But it's sort of like, well, what does he say? Self-improvement is just masturbation.
Self-destruction, however.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, this self-destruction, this self-immolation.
Yeah, that's where the nihilism sort of comes into it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just think it's interesting that it's just sort of baked into a lot of people's, you know, basic understanding of the world that asceticism is good and that there is certain like power that you can derive from it, and like it's just like most, you know, it's just intuitive. But obviously you need to direct it towards, you know, something like Christ.
And that's obviously the core thing those people are missing is...
Yeah.
They were anti-Christian, a lot of them were, blatantly.
Yeah. Well, Brad Pitt's...
Nietzsche was.
Yeah. And then, you know, Tyler Durden or whatever, he says, what does he say? Have you ever thought of the possibility that maybe God doesn't like you?
Yeah.
And we sort of get this idea that...
Yeah, that's interesting, is they never deny God's existence.
Yeah.
Because these are spiritual people.
Yeah.
They aren't atheists. But, yeah, they certainly aren't Christian or don't take the Christian view of God.
No. but I just think it's interesting because he says, because there's, I mean, we can talk about the themes, but there's also like certain, I don't know, other interesting things. But we get the idea that the narrator's parents were divorced, and then we understand.
Yeah, he's a child of the ashes. He's
Yeah, and
basically every ailment of the deracinated modern man is in him.
yeah, and Brad Pitt says maybe God is, he explicitly says God is a symbol of our father, and like if our fathers were absent or whatever, then like he's sort of self-aware about the fact that their perception of God is just based on like their experiences, but he doesn't really reflect on it in terms of, I guess, what is actually true or what is like epistemologically consistent or anything like that. It is just sort of this very it's just like a projection of their own, uncritical projection of their own, I don't know.
It's a post hoc rationalization of their feelings.
Yeah. But
it's a bit almost narcissistic.
Oh, it's extremely narcissistic.
Yeah, not a bit, yeah. It's extremely narcissistic.
That's the irony of
it's a constant thing with this sphere is narcissism.
Yeah, but that's the ultimate irony of their creed of saying you are not a special snowflake, is that it makes them feel like a special snowflake, and that's sort of, the movie is self-aware enough to, I think, because the movie, what I really like about the movie is that it doesn't make fun of the fact that these men are suffering. It doesn't like say, oh, look at this.
It's undoubtedly a condemnation of the way they live, undoubtedly, but it also doesn't give into the revolutionaries being just these really great guys,
Yeah, and so that's what I like about the movie. It is actually nuanced because a more modern thing would either,
they will be really diverse.
Well,
they'll be really chipper. There'd be women. There'd be blacks, and they'd all have quippy one-liners all the time.
But what I mean is
capitalist oppression. And how terrible white people are.
Yeah, basically.
Comrade.
Yeah. But I like that they call them space monkeys and. I don't know.
Yeah, he's literally building a paramilitary organization. Which again, you've got that. That's another one. Mishima. Mishima's another person in this category. Who built a paramilitary. Staged a coup. Killed himself because he's Japanese. Of course he did.
Yeah.
Which is cringe, but oh.
Yeah.
But then that's another thing is, I don't know if I want to get into this now, but obviously there is the homosexual aspect, which I remembered from Mishima.
Yeah, and that's present, but I feel like that's more there as part of the psychological aspect of the main character, as opposed to really that relevant to the Project Mayhem and the cult as much.
Not really, no.
It's more, but
I think it's interesting, almost meta information, because obviously the author of the book is a homosexual man. Homosexuality seems to be relatively common amongst the Bronze Age pervert sphere.
Yeah.
And obviously Yukio Mishima was a homosexual.
Yeah.
So,
it's interesting.
This sort of general sphere seems to develop, because you can obviously it's hypermasculine, and hypermasculinity can result in homosexuality. You've got homosexuals are either hyperfeminine men or hypermasculine men a lot of the time. So.
Well, I think it's interesting because the movie sort of tacitly admits that cause of or there's a resultant because of absentee fathers, it can lead men to seeking male approval, and then that can become perverted because you have the narrator Edward Norton or whatever.
Which is then related back to God, so you could supplement God, the lack of God in for seeking
Yeah, and so
and that goes on
effectively,
homosexuality and things.
so because at the beginning he has like Tyler's full attention, and then as the project develops,
Yeah, there's the yeah.
he becomes like like there's no other way to
He
interpret.
becomes jealous of Marla when
Yeah,
Marla is having sex with his alter ego.
yeah, and
He becomes jealous.
and he also is jealous of Jared Leto's character, the
Yeah,
Blondie.
who's a sort of a twink. He's like this sort of almost feminine in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like he's smooth, he's blonde. He's
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, and it's just he's just supposed to be like a pretty boy. I don't think.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're supposed to read too much more into it. But
which is
it's
again another thing is destroying beautiful things, and that's why
yeah,
he completely fucks him up, and he looks awful for the rest of the film.
yeah.
I think that prosthetic was done by Rob Botton,
Ah, okay.
who did the effects in the thing.
Yeah, that's
I think I spotted his name in the credits.
ah, okay. Yeah, because that's great prosthetics on his face. Um, yeah, and there's no real other way to interpret when he beats him up other than like jealousy for the
Yeah.
attention he's getting from Brad Pitt. So, it's kind of this twisted seeking of male approval because you didn't have a father figure, basically.
Hmm.
Um, what else? What else is there to say?
I was thinking sort of more about. So I'm not too familiar with myself, but the sort of Nietzschean connections. Because
I am
obviously,
not that familiar with
yeah,
Nietzsche.
we can't talk about too much, but there's, from what I understand, it takes almost a direct part from Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which is like the book he wrote.
One of,
'Cause,
yeah.
yeah, one of the books. Because Zarathustra in that is sort of a Tyler Durden character in a way. Like he's trying to
Yeah.
point out similar ailments of the world to people,
Yeah.
and when he can't get the attention of sort of the mass populace, he picks out select men that he deems have potential,
Yeah.
and sort of forms them into a group.
Mm.
Similar to what Tyler Durden does.
Yeah. Um.
And you've got the what was it? Obviously you've got the aspect of it being obviously a mental battle. He isn't literally fighting another person, obviously,
Yeah.
and so it's that sort of self-actualization.
Yeah. Which he may or may not achieve at the end of the film.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that now. Then, I'm of the belief that Marla is a real person.
And I believe that Marla is a secondary figment of his imagination for a number of reasons, which I listed when we watched the film, but I don't quite remember all of them right now. But number one, they talk similarly. Her and Brad Pitt, they both are smoking cigarettes the whole time. There's lots of what I would call like cinematic cues to identify them as like similar characters, and she appears in his happy place sort of thing in the snow. She never interacts with any other characters really, that explicitly. In a similar fashion with Brad Pitt, and it makes, because and there's also, he mentions having like a yin yang table, and so she represents this sort of feminine aspect, and then Brad Pitt's the masculine aspect. She doesn't necessarily have to be real or not real for it to work, thematically, but it's just that's an interesting. It's just a film theory. Some people think that I subscribe to. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, so my sort of perspective on it was that I think it works a bit better thematically if she's real, because that way it's very much the strictly Nietzschean sort of idea of coming to terms with your masculinity.
Mm.
And then once that's self-actualized, and he has sort of melded these aspects of Durden and his own,
Mm.
because he's confronted these things. That's sort of when he's ready to actually, sort of, when he's actually ready to have a relationship with a woman properly, a real woman,
Uh,
is once he's actually become a proper man.
yeah.
Because who was it before that actually had sex with him in his mind? It was a Tyler Durden. It was a masculine character
Yeah.
of himself.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how him having sex with the feminine aspect of his mind, and then the feminine aspect not being actualized into him. I'm not sure how that works thematically. That's all.
Well, I guess it just means he hasn't fully resolved his issues at the end of the film.
Right.
Um,
I think it's probably because I like sort of more happy endings, and
maybe that's
it's
it.
nice, he's become a proper man, and now he can have a relationship
Yeah.
with his
But I
schizo
think
girlfriend.
I think like there's the scenes of Marla and Brad Pitt having sex in the house while
Yeah.
Edward Norton is doing stuff, and
Mhm.
there's the line earlier on self improvement is masturbation, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, if they are both figments of his imagination, they're having sex while he's reading, doing push ups, and like doing productive things, and
Yeah.
so that sort of ties into that line.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think what other things does she say. Uh, I don't know. I don't remember all of the things that I noticed like in the film that indicate. Well, also he like finds her number.
Yeah.
Uh, After his apartment exploded, which is kind of a big
Yeah.
coincidence.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think to interpret that as he had it in his pocket and placed it there or something makes a lot less sense than. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. Just a little interesting thing that I think about the movie.
Another thing that I've just thought of is when he shoots himself in the mouth.
Oh yeah,
That's a final confrontation with pain, and
yeah,
that's being able to willingly sort of induce suffering onto yourself for
yeah,
some sort of for some greater enlightenment or
yeah,
knowledge or something like that, actualization, whatever word you want to use. So that's a good way of tying that up, and it's a good final catalyst
yeah,
because it also sort of has a certain logical sense to it in that because for all he knows, he could actually be just killing himself,
yeah,
and so that's why Durden dies because
mm,
of in his mind he has he has blown his brains out,
yeah,
but obviously he sort of misses and just takes out his jaw a bit.
yeah.
Uh, and what you've got the early use of CGI.
Oh yeah, which is excellent in
That's
this
yeah,
film.
it's used really really well. It's a textbook example of how you use CGI. It's
Yeah,
an impossible camera movement
yeah,
that you couldn't actually do. It's done sparingly. It's only doing sort of inanimate objects that are easy to do.
yeah,
Most of it goes by pretty fast, and you don't really tell that it's because when you actually pause it, you can pick out things that it's a bit dated, but it
yeah.
works really well in motion.
For 1999, it actually holds up pretty
It's
well.
good, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Um,
alongside like Davy Jones in the Pirates of the Caribbean,
yeah. Um,
and you've got the soundtrack as well.
oh, the soundtrack's great. Yeah, oh, the
Yeah,
production elements are amazing.
yeah.
Acting,
It's a
everyone's
Fincher movie.
everything's. I think this is one of the best scripts he's worked with, though. I would say. I
I'd
mean,
reckon, yeah, yeah.
if not, well, I mean, you prefer Zodiac. I mean, I like Zodiac as well, but I mean, and that's deliberately not as neat as this. Like the whole point of Zodiac is that it's not neat. But I have a bone to pick with Zodiac just because it's based
Mm.
the Jake Gyllenhaal character in that movie. When you find out what
What do you
he
actually
would,
look like?
well, no, not that, but like when you look into the actual,
He wasn't as important. Is that
he wasn't as important, but also like he just made up like half the stuff in his book.
right? Yeah.
So, which does that play into the thing? I don't know, but I don't know. It's just sort of. I like Zodiac. I just prefer Fight Club. That's all I'm saying.
Hmm.
Um, Anything else?
Uh,
We've kind of covered it basically. I mean, yeah, we talked about this the cult aspect, which is interesting.
mhm.
Like it talks about how cults work and stuff. Um, and there's obviously the punishment for like everything they talk about is like getting your balls cut off, and
Yeah,
that like happens.
castration. Yeah.
Yeah,
And obviously, that ties into your masculine and
masculine.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
And there's something else I was going to think of.
oh, and the subliminal messaging stuff is an interesting theme in it as well.
Yes.
That's one
Because
thing we
obviously, you
can't
have it
forget.
introduced with because
Pornography.
Tyler works at various
Yeah,
places. He pisses in soup bowls and stuff.
yeah,
And he's being a menace. And
yeah,
one of his things is that he splices in single frames of pornography into children's cartoons because he works as a projectionist.
yeah,
And that sets up this idea of symbolism. And one of the early things is that even before Tyler's introduced, single frames of him are spliced into the actual film because
yeah,
he's starting to manifest in the protagonist's mind.
yeah,
Um, and so yeah, that sets up the larger thing of subliminal messaging, which you get things throughout the film. Certain advertisements look
yeah,
odd, and they're trying to sort of send subliminal messages and things like that.
yeah. And it is sort of about um, how society, is, I guess, like brainwashing people to a certain extent.
Hmm.
It's an interesting thing to have in there. Like, there's just so much, so much is just great in this movie. There's so many like little things that you could talk about. I do find it very interesting, that they go with like having pornography as the obvious subliminal thing. But I mean,
Yeah, very
that's
based.
it's so true. Like, you know,
I've always laughed at the final one at the very end of the movie.
yeah, that's quite comedic. It's pretty funny because it's at that point you've gotten to the end of the movie and it's like it's just there as like a joke effectively, like
Yeah,
finally, like screw you sort of thing.
and the ending of the film is great.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
I mean it repopularized the Pixies for
yeah,
like half of like everyone that had never heard them. So that's good. That's a good song. Where is
and
my mind?
yeah, and
Everyone likes that song.
the whole soundtrack by the Dust Brothers is great. I mean, the opening where they're going through,
Oh
and that's
yeah,
another thing. Even the opening is the neurons in his brain,
yeah.
and that's setting up.
It's all in his head.
What? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's great, and that music going along with it instantly gets you into the mood.
yeah,
Like just from that, you know that you're probably going to be watching something pretty special.
yeah. And I
Like
love. I actually because I normally hate movies that like open at the ending of the film.
yeah, and flashback. Yep.
Because like it's like pretty much after this movie, heaps of stuff did it, and they just do it. It's lazy.
Yeah.
Whereas this movie, it works because when you get back to the end, it's completely recontextualized.
Yeah.
It's not simply just now you understand what's going on in the plot. It's like
Yeah.
being completely flipped as to what's going on.
Mhm.
So it's
It is literally gone from being real to being fake. It's
yeah,
imaginary now.
yeah, it's a different sort of thing. And I like the narration and stuff as well. And we got to shout out the scene where he beats himself up in front of his boss.
That's a fantastic scene. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of the scenes where Edward Norton has to do a lot of physical acting
Oh, he's
with
great.
fucking beating himself up. I mean, you've got because initially you see the scene outside Lou's tavern.
Yeah.
It's initially obviously it's portrayed as Durden and the narrator getting into a fight,
Mm.
but obviously it's recontextualized as just the narrator beating the shit out of himself.
Yeah.
And through the combination of Ed Norton's slightly exaggerated performance and the sound effects,
Yeah.
it's really fucking good.
Yeah.
And yeah, the scene in the office is great because you just have him really fucking destroying himself on furniture,
Yeah.
and he gets all the. This another thing is violence is done really well in this film. Like
Yeah.
it's genuinely painful to look at
Yeah.
when he gets all that glass shards in his wrist and stuff, and he's sort of
Yeah.
leaning onto the couch, and you can see them sort of pressing into him.
Yeah.
And you've got those little details of the sound design. You can hear the glass scraping itself up against his skin and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really
and
good.
just his boss is just
Yeah.
his boss doesn't say anything. It's perfect.
Yeah, yeah,
That guy's got a really expressive face,
yeah. It's a
and
great
he
scene.
just looks like he can't believe it at all.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite scene.
And then you've got another good one is it'd be Ed Norton's most I imagine demanding scene where it's shot from the security cameras
Oh
at
yes.
at the end when Tyler Durden's beating the shit out of him
Yeah,
and he's getting drugged by his head
yeah,
and he's kicking himself along the floor with his feet as if he's being drugged
yeah,
and he throws himself down the stairs.
yeah. That's really good. And
And that's a whole other thing is sorry, I just remembered that ties in the Nietzschean thing is I think with Nietzsche you have to what is it, reaching bottom.
yeah,
You've gone as far down as you can, and when that happens in the story is when he's down at the bottom of the stairs
yeah,
before he's sort of ascendancy again. So,
yeah. Mm,
oh yeah, and again, like I mentioned, the soundtrack, the Dust Brothers, they did a really good job.
yeah. Oh, the soundtrack's great.
It's it's very unusual. It's, for instance, I probably wouldn't listen to many of the songs on their own, but they tie in really well
Yeah,
with the
the action of the
action on
film. Yeah,
screen,
yeah,
and that's something that Fincher does is that the camera movements, the acting, it's all in sync with each other because he does a decent amount of takes actually, but it isn't for the same
yeah.
reason that Kubrick did it because we were talking about how Kubrick would do a lot of takes because he wasn't actually aware of what exactly he wanted,
Yeah,
but he knew what he didn't wanted, and so to basically cycle through all of what he didn't want until he finally got to the actors doing it how he wanted it to be done. But
yeah.
what Fincher's literally doing is he does a decent amount of takes because he has this idea of having the camera movement and the actors perfectly flowing and in sync with each other. So there's this
Mm,
perfect rhythm that's got to be nailed. So he'll just, if he's got a person walking over and the camera's following him, the camera has to be absolutely perfect in rhythm with all their movements, how they're turning
mm,
and everything. And it's this slowly sort of hypnotizing effect that having it so perfect all the time does to you, and
yeah,
especially when combined with the music itself.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I don't think we could praise this movie enough. I mean, I don't think we've like
It's
super explicitly spoiled everything. We've sort of implied everything.
it's
But
I've always found it hard to talk about stuff you like
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's like we're gonna go into Suicide Club in a while, and will probably take us longer to talk about that because there's so much wrong with it, and you can break those things down. But when you like stuff, it's harder to exactly figure out what you like about it,
yeah.
and
And I think
often time you end up just going, yeah, that's good.
yeah,
Like yeah, the music is good.
yeah. And I think with something like Fight Club as well, since it's
Yeah,
just so well
it's been
known,
talked
it's
about a
hard
lot. Yeah,
to yeah, it's hard to try and have a fresh take. And I don't think we necessarily did today, but whatever. You're gonna sit and listen anyway. Um, but yeah, go watch Fight Club. If you haven't watched it in a while, go watch it again. If you've never seen it, just you should definitely go watch it. Um, and I like as well, they make the soap out of human fat,
human
and it's
fat.
and
Yeah,
it's like because it's
it's another. It just adds to the idea of this decadent society they live in.
yeah, and it's just very because he says specifically like, oh, people discovered just soap through human sacrifice,
Yeah.
and it's just everything just ties in thematically, but like on a surface level, it's just like, oh, this is cool, but it's just
Yeah, what was it? The first soap was made out of the bodies of warriors or something like that.
yeah, and it's like you know like because soap obviously represents sort of this cleaningness, this
Yeah.
purity sort of thing, and it's like yeah, you can only get it through like disgusting you know
And they associate the
things.
physical trial with it, like he
Yeah,
has to be burned.
yeah,
The purifying can also burn you,
yeah,
they can harm you.
yeah,
However, you come out stronger on the other side. You've gone through the physical pain, you know how to deal with it.
yeah. It's great, yeah.
And you've got So I'm just seeing more stuff we sort of go along. You've got the. I like the comedy of where Edward Norton works, because again you get into that corporate crap of, he's what is he? He investigates
Oh
accidents.
yeah,
He,
he's a
'cause
yeah yeah
he works for an unnamed major car company, and he investigates their accidents, figures out what is it, how common they are.
yeah.
Um,
It works
how
out.
can we use this for marketing and stuff?
Yeah, should we do a recall or not? Basically.
Yeah, should we do a recall? If it's common enough to do a recall, what are the various economic aspects towards a company?
Yeah.
Well, what is? I think it was specifically what is the possible amount they could be fined for it,
Yeah.
and if the recall is going to cost them more than that, they don't do it. They don't bother.
Yeah.
If the fine's cheaper, they'll just take the fine. They don't care about how many people might die because of their faulty
Yeah.
product. They don't care.
Yeah.
And you've got that good bit of comedy that again ties into the sort of, it's a subtle building up of that decadent aspect where the father in that car was so massive that his fat is like seared into the seat of the car.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, there's another bit where in that same scene where they see the kids like, retainer like burnt into the seat, and then he says, "Oh, that'd make a good anti-smoking ad." And it's like people are like primed to be thinking about how ads work and things like that in the world, and like
How to commercialize people suffering.
Yeah. So it's great. It's a great movie.
I think there was talks about doing a female reboot of it. That's like, it's a fundamentally masculine story.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Like, what do you call it? You call it a bitch fight club, I suppose. That would be.
Where'd you come up with that one? Did you?
That was on the spot. I'm proud of myself. That was, they'd just be talking shit. They'd just be talking shit about each other behind their backs.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
Their final thing is they smash the glass ceiling or whatever it is.
That's true.
We'll fire it's a physical place in the film, I suppose.
Yeah.
They find the glass ceiling and smash it.
Alright. Fight Club's good. Go watch it.
Watch it. Yeah.
Suicide Club time now. So I have to begin with the little anecdote I noted down about when we watched it.
Could I just stop you for a second?
Yeah.
I really want to quickly get some water because my throat is sore as fuck.
Okay. That's okay. I'll tell the story then.
All right.
I'll tell the story then. Okay, so me and Jack we were gonna get ready to watch the movie, and then I heard Jack chomping on whatever food he had at the time, and basically I said, you eating?" And he says, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Are you sure you want to be eating when we watch this movie?" He's like, "Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine." And then I'm like, "Okay." And then literally 20 seconds into the movie, a whole bunch of people get killed and hit by a train, and there's just blood and guts everywhere, and he's just he's like, "Oh, I've lost my appetite." So that was pretty good.
Yeah, I was traumatized by 50 Japanese schoolgirls jumping onto the railway tracks and just getting vaporized into a fucking red mist. That was fun.
Now, this movie is interesting because it has very similar themes.
It's an incredible opening. It is an incredible opening.
It's a good opening. It promises too much. It promises too much.
Yes, it does.
But it's actually quite similar to Fight Club thematically in that its ideas are about, advertising, like culture, and nihilism and things like that. But the thing is, it's just not coherent at all. Like nothing ties in with anything else.
Yeah, it has a lot of thematic issues, and just technical issues with the writing and even some of the filmmaking. Like we noticed some very odd and jarring edits that I don't think were meant to be as jarring as they were.
Well, let's go through what we liked. I actually liked most of the cinematography, and there's lots of really great dynamic shots and like long takes. There's that one
Yeah,
particular one.
it's Japanese. I
Yeah.
think they're good at it. Yeah.
So there's really great. It's all like hand camera.
What was the scene you're gonna point out?
It's the kids on the roof, and the camera's just like circling around them,
Yeah.
and that's because that's done really well because it's like the camera goes around them, and then when it's each person's turn to talk, obviously the camera's at the right spot, and it's well choreographed.
It's a well choreographed scene, yeah, because that's something that could easily feel a bit out of place, if that makes sense. Like it'd be a bit jarring.
Yeah.
If they all conveniently way to talk just when the camera's on them perfectly.
Yeah.
But it's done naturalistically enough that it works. And obviously, what that scene's building up to, the one take works quite well.
And I feel like almost that scene should have been the opening. Maybe.
It would fit better with what the rest of the film's going to be.
Yeah. And I think...
However, I understand if you've thought up that scene, that is the opening. It's like, that's a good scene.
Yeah, because the thing is, where do you put that scene?
It's gonna get your audience in from the beginning.
Yeah, I think.
It's like, I think we said what it was, but it's literally 50, I think, or 52.
Yeah.
Like, young Japanese schoolgirls just jump into front of an oncoming train. You see geysers of blood splash up over people on the side, people on the subway, over the windows of the train. You literally get close-ups of a girl's head popping under a wheel, of their arms being mangled in the train tracks. And everything.
It's great. I loved it.
I almost vomited because I was eating, but it got me fucking goblin laugh. It got me interested in the.
I just could not believe the timing because I said, "Are you sure you want to eat?" And then 2 seconds later, it's just like one of the goriest scenes ever.
It's an effective scene. I was like,
Yeah.
You could have warned me that I was going to be eating, but I'm interested now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't fit with what the rest of the film is, and you've got we'll probably get into it later, but the scene after that's even worse.
Yeah, I think so. I think the big problem with the movie is it tries to do too many things, and you can have movies with an episodic feel that are great. Like, so for instance, like the Japanese original Grudge movie is like very episodic. It's borderline like an anthology.
I haven't seen it. We'll have to watch it sometime.
But yeah, basically it's like there is kind of an overarching story of what's going on, but it's like it's basically a few like multiple vignettes of people coming to this house and getting attacked by ghosts. And it's done well. Tension builds well, and it's it's spooky. And this is sort of has this semi-episodic feel in that there's multiple scenes where it's just like it's clear someone's just going to commit suicide in some bizarre way. And some of these scenes are good and work well, and some of them are too dragged out and incoherent, and just like poorly directed, basically. And they go way too long. But the thing is, I don't mind the some of the episodic feel to the movie, but the problem is too many of the episodes are bad, and then the ones that are sort of like the through line are incoherent.
Yeah. So I suppose we should go into it. The overall synopsis of the film is that obviously those schoolgirls commit suicide, and then obviously, the police are going to investigate that. And so they come to they start developing the idea that there's some sort of suicide cult.
Yeah.
That is prompting these. You get hints early on in the film that's probably supernatural, which is one of my biggest problems with it, which we'll get into more. You have the whole hacker subplot, because one of the things that initially tips me off to it may being coordinated is that there's a website hosting just an image of 2 different coloured dots. The white ones are women, and there's more of them. There's like 50-something, I think. And the red dots are men. And it's suggested they are future suicides, I think.
Well, they say that the dots appear before the news.
Before the news, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, clearly...
Someone knows what's happening. Yeah. And so that's obviously what baptism was probably being some sort of cult or something. Because obviously it have to be a cult because these people are voluntarily committing suicide. It wouldn't be a murder necessarily,
Yeah.
unless it was a very supernatural sort of thing. And that's where you think it might be heading because of the scene in the hospital. It could be that
Yeah.
the suicide cult is a red herring, and there's
Yeah.
actually something more supernatural at play, and maybe people aren't actually committing suicide.
Yeah.
And there still sort of is, I suppose, could be a semi-supernatural thing with the
Well,
band, if that makes sense. If you want to talk about it now, we might want to leave it till a bit later.
let's just try and go. We'll try and go through it relatively chronologically, I guess.
All right.
To
So
try and keep us coherent.
yeah. So what is it after the? Is it? I'm trying to think of myself
Well,
now. Is it
so after the opening, we then get
Yeah,
a
you
scene in a hospital which
in
goes
the
on
hospital?
too
Yeah.
long, where it's like there's two nurses. One of them goes to get lunch or dinner or something,
hmm
and then the lights go out, and the security guard's looking around, and he can't find you know, the nurse that stayed in the hospital, and then
Yeah.
the nurse that went to go get food comes back, and then she's like, "Oh, do you want the other girl's food?" And then he goes, "Oh yeah, why not?" And then she jumps out the window, basically.
Yeah. So it's shot like a ghost movie or something. You know, it's shot like some supernatural horror film.
Yeah, and I don't
And that's
mind the idea of them
it's
playing
an effective
with,
scene.
because ultimately, like from our perspective, suicide, is always influenced by demons and supernatural elements,
Yeah.
which I don't is that's the reality of the situation. But the way that they sort of play between, oh, is it ghosts, is it demons, or is it some other
Yeah.
thing? It
It's
doesn't
annoying
quite
because it isn't
work.
actually relevant.
It
No.
doesn't quite
And
work.
because one of the main things that not only does this scene have the tropes of that sort of genre, but you get a later scene in which you revisit the security guard and he sees two visions of the nurses that committed suicide,
Yeah.
which suggesting that there's a blatantly supernatural thing, and it's never brought up again.
They shouldn't have
The
had. I mean,
supernatural ghost aspect is never brought up again in the entire film.
yeah.
So it's like, how do the nurses tie into it then if they weren't meant to signify that it was a supernatural element?
Yeah.
Neither are they connected to the actual plot in terms of the
Yeah.
sort of named characters that you're meant to care about, and they don't interact with it in terms of the thematic elements or hints as to what the nature of this
Yeah.
force cult thing is. It
It
becomes a useless scene.
it really should have been opening scene, which is a good scene, and then go
Mhm.
into the cops immediately. And then
Yes.
the cops are like, "What the hell's going on? What the hell's going on?" And then we have another scene of people committing suicide, and then the cops pull up, and it's like, okay, now we get more information, and then have it progress in that fashion rather than having two suicide scenes, then have the cops for a little bit, and then it just doesn't. There's no real rhythm to it, to like what's happening. It's really strange.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to think exactly what to say. You could keep the nurse scene. I agree with you that you'd want to move its position. You could have it so that it goes to the cops, and then that could be the second suicide. However, if you're going to keep it, it needs to actually be relevant in the later part of the story. So you're going to have to change the
But you
parts
could
after that,
you could make it a shorter scene because its
and
relevance is seeing
not
find
have
that
the.
skin thing.
That's true. Yeah, you can you can use it to build up the because that's another thing is at these crime scenes there are bags, like sports bags, filled with rolls of skin. They're pieces that have been cut off people and stitched together like cubes.
Yeah, it's
And they're
great.
stitched in. It's well done. It's a genuinely nasty imagery,
Yeah,
and they're stitched together into a line and then rolled up. And so yeah, you could use the nurse scene for that. Cut out the part where the ghosts show up again if you don't want to have the supernatural part.
Remove
Because
that.
that's one of the worst parts. Is it completely fucks with you
Yeah,
and doesn't end up being relevant.
yeah,
And then it could work. That those sort of parts could work.
yeah.
Because like I said, I do like the imagery in the hospital scene.
The the hospital scene, I like the idea of it.
I dislike hospitals. They scare me a bit. So maybe that's why it works on me.
Oh, okay. I just felt like it didn't. It just wasn't well directed. That
Yeah.
hospital scene. Like I would say, some of the suicide scenes are for what they're going for are great. So like for instance, the scene where it's the mum like preparing. It's very stereotypical. Mum's preparing dinner and then
Hmm.
she's, um, you know, like how many movies are there where there's a woman cutting vegetables and then she ends up cutting her hand or cutting her finger? Like I feel like that's in every other horror movie,
Yeah.
but it's done pretty
How
well
about a
here.
space? I remember.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah, it's always been a scene that, because obviously it's fairly common, but it always gets me because it's an everyday domestic sort of thing that you're
yeah,
doing that could genuinely go horribly wrong in real life. You could actually just fuck it up, like
yeah,
slip and cut your finger off in real life.
yeah,
And so it's more horrible than a lot of the other more over the top things just because of how real it is and could actually happen to you very easily.
yeah.
Because
Um,
that unironically that scene was one of the more effective ones for me, despite how understated it is. Just her sort of just cutting into
yeah,
her fingers over and over again, and it
yeah,
worked for me as well in Color Out of Space,
yeah. It's great.
which is a film with lots of horrible imagery, but that was one of the more effective ones for me.
Yeah. Um, then I guess we can talk about the David Bowie, Japanese David Bowie guy.
Well,
Or what else? What else
maybe
happens?
talk about the cop.
The thing is, he has no
Um,
character.
well, that's the thing is that you because it's being investigated by this police officer, and you get this scene where he comes home, and I like the scene where he comes home. Yeah, his wife is very sweet, and the way she introduces herself, and I was starting, it was a good introduction to their relationship, but it
Yeah,
wasn't built up
yeah,
properly after that.
yeah,
And you get a bit with his son. The bits with his son were decent because you get him helping his dad because obviously the son knows more about the
Oh
internet
yeah, that was a good
and
scene. Yeah,
technology.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
good.
But they,
Um,
yeah, there were too many cop characters.
but
Would
that was about it.
be
Yeah,
my major.
well, that's another issue is that you have see this. It's hard to talk about because it's so jumbled itself.
Oh
When we
yeah,
talk about it, we're also jumbled.
yeah.
But there's this woman that is, I think she was walking back to their apartment or whatever,
Oh
and
yeah,
her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend, I don't actually remember what relationship they were specifically. He's one of the people committing suicide, and he jumps from the roof and hits her while she's walking underneath. It's directed really oddly. It doesn't look right,
no.
because it's a hard effect to pull off.
And
Because
also, it would kill
after
her.
getting hit by yes, and so he awkwardly like his arm or shoulder slaps her ear or something. It looks odd,
Yeah,
and like she just randomly bleeds from her ear.
yeah,
She doesn't any bruising or anything, just like this perfect stream of blood from her ear.
yeah.
And
And there's not
and
enough
like
blood from him dying, from him hitting the concrete.
no, not really. It reminds me of do you remember the scene in Brew
Yes,
in
yeah. Don't
Bruges?
spoil. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil the
Oh
movie.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, a certain character
Anyway,
fucking
yeah, yeah. I know. I
explodes.
know what you're talking about. And if anyone's, yeah,
They explode.
yeah. And I'm like,
Yeah,
after the train scene, like, what did they
yeah,
run out of buckets of blood?
yeah. I
That
don't
would have
know.
been a perfect time. Like, and why did she even need to get hit by him? It would have been even more effective if she had just been walking along, and then he jumps and then lands next to her, and then she gets covered in
Mhm.
blood. Like that would have been great.
I did sort of like their dialogue. It's very stilted, like they're actually in shock,
Yeah,
which I appreciated because from what I understand and from the limited experience I've had myself with sort of traumatizing incidents like that,
mm,
actually like screaming, and being hysterical is relatively rare.
yeah,
Actually, whilst it's happening,
yeah,
people usually go into shock, and so I appreciate that a fair bit.
yeah. That was good.
And how she sort of just walks off
Yeah,
and goes and sits in that cafe, and then the police find her.
yeah.
But then again, where does her character really go? She
Nothing.
just, she just sort of randomly finds his notebook and stuff. Was it a notebook or a folder or something?
Yeah, and then in like one
That's
scene, she
burnt.
works out everything that's going
Yeah.
on.
In one scene, she magically figures it out. Because we'll just say it now. At least as far as I could grasp, the idea is that the Japanese public are being fed subliminal messages by this cutesy J-pop girl band called Dessert,
Yeah.
and that is what has caused people to commit suicide.
Yes.
And what was it? She goes to one. She sort of figures it out. She goes to one of their concerts. And when everybody else leaves, she sort of goes backstage. I think is that what happens? Because it's such
I
an
don't
oddly
know.
directed scene. I actually
Yeah.
lost track of what was happening.
It's unclear.
And then she comes back onto the stage, and there's all these children for some reason
Yeah.
who do the Japanese thing of telling you, just explicitly talking about in their emotions like they're robots.
Yeah.
You know, nothing is said sort of underhandedly or in a roundabout way like you actually talk
Yeah.
about their emotions. So you know, you really get the message.
It's really weird that they're just like,
It's just random children,
yeah, doesn't really make
and then
any sense. And then for some reason, whatever they like, so what do they say again? They're like, if you die, they basically say if you died, who cares, sort of thing.
that's basic.
Like they say, would it affect your connection with your other people? What about your connection with yourself? And it's
Yeah,
like,
and
what
there's something
does that
to do
even
with-
mean?
And there's also something to do with, I also picked up on was that if two people are dead, they have a better connection or something. Like,
It was something like, oh,
because because obviously this is not a spoiler, but eventually the police officer's family kills themselves,
yeah,
and from what I got from that was that this idea of that because they are now dead,
yeah,
he's less connected from them, and whatever connection means in this
Yeah.
weird spirituality of theirs, and that for him to be connect with them again, he also has to die.
yeah. It's sort of
something.
like, I think they like the idea. It's like this weird idea of like, oh, if everyone just killed themselves, then everyone would be in heaven
Yeah.
together, sort of thing. Is like
Yeah.
kind of what they were saying. I feel like it must have just gotten. It must.
Yeah,
Part
that's
of-
another thing is that, you know, we're obviously reading subtitles because we can't speak Japanese. So.
I feel like part of it got lost in translation, but part of it is just dumb. Like, because it just. It. Yeah.
Yeah, but then after, oh god, after when the children deliver that monologue, she then goes, was it? She goes backstage again.
Oh,
Does she
yeah.
go into some sort of like weird crate thing? I'm trying to think.
And I thought that
Yeah.
was like a decent. Like, I mean, the thing is, it was just couched by so much incoherence that it was sort of a bit
Yeah.
like, it kind of made it less effective. But I thought that was a cool
Yeah, and-
scene, like revealing how they got the skin and stuff. That was kind of cool.
Again, it was something that genuinely made me a bit sort of grossed out.
Yeah.
Because again, it's sort of this idea because it's a I forgot, it's a plane, you know, a wood plane. They used to shape wood.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, it's an object that's an everyday object that you're used to,
Yeah.
and it's being used for a very gruesome thing. Because what they do is they get the wood plate, and that's how they remove the skin that they then sew
Yeah.
into the strip, the rolled up strip.
Yeah.
Another thing that I thought was kind of dumb was that how a lot of them conveniently have tattoos that they can match up.
Yeah.
Because the cop's son had a tattoo that could be matched up.
Yeah. That didn't really make any sense. Like, what?
No, and then that's
what was
another
the
thing
deal
is
with the
that
tattoos?
Yeah, and apparently the cop's family were also missing the strips of skin. So it isn't just through the actual TV that the band is playing in that you commit suicide. You have to have gone to a concert and had that strip of skin removed.
Yeah.
So
like
all
how,
of the cops. So at some point in time, apparently, according to this film, all of the police officers' family except him
Yeah.
had gone to that concert, had a strip of their skin taken. You know, apparently the cop had never had sex with his wife since that happened.
Well, it could
You
have
know.
happened the day before or something. I don't know.
I suppose apparently they just went to a fucking concert. Maybe the TV prompts you to go to a concert. Maybe that's what happens. I don't know.
Yeah,
They don't really
but
say.
it's yeah, it's very
Yeah,
it's
there's a-
ambiguous.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure the chronology really works out there.
It doesn't really make sense at all.
No. And then You think that's whack enough. Guess what? There's more characters.
Yeah.
There is a hacker girl.
Yeah. And then she has a whole plot of her own. But there's like
Yeah.
there's 3 or 4 movies going on at once, and look, you can do 2 movies at once easily. That's most movies have sort of 2 movies going on. All right.
You've got your A plot and your B plot.
Yeah. But A, B, C, and D, and none of them tie together. That's
Properly, no.
You can't do that.
No, because you've got the hacker girl who is the one who tips the police off to the website existing.
Yeah.
She's interested for some reason. I don't really mind. Like, that's what we were talking about, was how you could roll the hacker girl and the one whose boyfriend commits suicide.
Yeah, into one
You
character.
could roll them into one. You could then have the hacker girl's reason for being interested in it being that her boyfriend committed suicide.
Yeah, and you
So
could have
there's a
her
personal connection for her.
and then she could still get kidnapped by that weird group, which we'll discuss
And
in a second.
And that's how, they know about her, is because her boyfriend was a part of their group.
Yeah, or something
Rather
like
than
that.
just
Yeah.
rather than just randomly showing up and having a convenient message on their website or whatever that says "look behind you," that she conveniently opens up right when they're behind them. That's an absurd, retarded fucking scene.
I mean, I don't mind having
it's
one.
dumb as fuck.
Look, Japanese people, they're gonna put goofy, dumb shit in their movies. All right, I don't mind 1 or 2 things like that in the movie, but I don't know. You need to have the rest of the movie be coherent. Yeah, they really should have just had. They needed the relationship between the cop. They should have had 2 cops.
And then, yeah. Well, they did have the cop because when the girl who commits suicide, you don't know his name or care about him at all.
Yeah.
But when that girl commits suicide, not commit suicide, well, when the girl whose boyfriend committed suicide after she's joined the cult,
Yeah.
they sort of meet up. He spots her in like a crowd, and he thinks, because there's a bunch of other schoolgirls and it's near a subway,
Yeah.
and he thinks she's going to commit suicide, and he grabs her hand. They sort of have a non-verbal exchanges are good in films. They can be really powerful.
Yeah.
But we don't know these characters really. We definitely don't know that fucking cop at all.
No.
To
It's
have a non-verbal exchange, you've got to have 2 well-defined characters. They can be not so well-defined if the situation they're in is extreme and there's only one emotional implication you could get from it. Because
Yeah.
otherwise it's going to be unclear and you're not going to be sure what the fuck you're meant to be getting here.
Yeah.
But otherwise it's got to be well-defined. You've got to understand their relationship with each other. And then you can pull off a non-verbal exchange.
Yeah.
We don't know. We definitely, like I said, we definitely know the cop, and we sort of know what that girl is doing, kinda, what her thing is about, sort of.
Yeah.
And then she gets on the train, I think. Is that right? And then
Yeah.
she doesn't commit suicide. I don't think.
I don't even remember the end.
At
of
least
the
not
movie,
in
man.
the film. It's implied that she will eventually,
Yeah,
because she's
yeah.
joined
Part
the
of
cult.
Yeah.
And then you've got the school scene.
Yeah, which is a great scene.
Which I really like. It's really good. It was when I still had hope for the film, because it's one of the early ones,
Yeah,
and
because they
it's a good way to introduce what's the word? Some sort of dubious element to it, because it's the way it's framed. It genuinely seemed to me, and that's what I thought they were doing, was that these were literally just dumb kids.
Yeah.
Who, because the whole thing is that they sort of jokingly, and this is when they do the really great long take, is they're sort of joking about, as school kids do, they're a bit morbid, they're joking about all these suicides sort of being a bit edgy.
Yeah.
And they start joking about how they could do it themselves, they're school kids, they did it with school kids, And then they take it a bit too far, and they all get up on the ledge because, it's in Japan, they have limited space, and so a lot of the time they do hang out on the roofs of schools.
Yeah.
And they all get up onto the edge of the roof and hold hands. And then the way it's edited is that it sort of makes sense. One person could slip, or one of them could be genuinely suicidal. They could jokingly sort of jump and actually fall over because they're holding hands. A lot of them go.
Yeah.
and so a lot of them genuinely just fucking die.
Yeah.
And then you have that scene afterwards of some of the people that didn't fall off.
Yeah.
They hadn't been holding their hands as tight. And then you have the scene of that girl who, because the ones that do commit suicide because they're part of the cult, they never seem sad or anything.
Yeah.
They're always happy.
Yeah.
They're sort of blissfully unaware. Where she is genuinely traumatized.
Yeah, and that made
And-
sense why she like
Yeah.
she was just in shock and she's like didn't know what to do, so she just
Yeah, and she had made a promise to them.
yeah.
They had willingly or unwillingly gone through with it, and her and that other guy were the only ones left.
Yeah.
And in that traumatized state, she's sort of thinking, why should she be left out of it? They all, whether jokingly or not, pledged to it, and she grabs him and falls off with him.
Yeah. And yeah.
So it's this
a great
good
scene.
way of seeding doubt as to what suicides from now on can actually be counted as a part of this cult.
Yeah.
What ones are perhaps a general sort of suicide, and what ones are dumb people joking around
Yeah.
in relation to the suicide cult and actually die.
Yeah, and it's about
And
talking
that's what I
about
thought they were going to do, was that
Yeah.
because the next one you have is a single person committing suicide.
yeah.
The guy who jumps off the building. I thought that was going to be, another way of sowing doubt. This could just, because it's fucking Japan.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people commit suicide there.
Yeah.
It could just be a lonely sort of guy who's jumped off the top of his building.
Yeah.
But they never capitalize on that.
Yeah, and that's I feel like this movie was like, oh, I want to do a movie about suicides. I've got this idea for this great scene where all these girls jump in front of a train. Oh, and I've got this cool idea for like this meat, like patchy skin thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, oh, I actually have to have themes in this movie. And then it's just like this pulling between these cool ideas that the director clearly had, and they are genuinely cool ideas, and then
Yeah, they
also
are.
trying to do a commentary on like suicide in Japanese culture. And the thing is, the cool stuff, half of the cool stuff, doesn't work at all with the ideas in the quote-unquote more what do you call it? You know what I'm saying. The cool ideas don't mesh with the serious quote-unquote criticism stuff or the social commentary stuff.
Yeah, it's
Whereas
he's simultaneously trying to claim to be deep and profound about the current state of Japan, its economic issues, its issue with suicide, whilst going, look at this badass fucking scene where all these people kill themselves and it's all bloody and it's
Whereas
exploitational.
Fight Club, you've got cool, edgy stuff, but that it ties in thematically. Like
And
the things work together.
genuinely, it isn't like the violence in Fight Club isn't exaggerated or comedic, or it's genuinely uncomfortable to look at.
Yeah, I think Suicide Club is. I mean, I'm 99% sure it's meant to be a dark comedy.
I hope so. I'm assuming it's meant to be some sort of comedy.
Just because, I mean, I don't know, maybe I messed up. Maybe I just was finding it so funny because you were grossed out by the stuff when we were watching it.
But yeah, you've got and the last sort of main section, the, what is it? Would be the D plot, I suppose, is the bizarre David Bowie band thing who kidnapped the hacker girl.
Yeah, so then
And interesting enough, see, this is another thing, like you mentioned about too many characters. Like, she's just hanging out with a random girl.
Yeah, like, why needlessly
And
haven't another girl?
She has no dialogue.
Yeah.
And I don't think she's not even the one they rape, is she? She's
No, then it's a third girl that gets
yeah,
raped.
and then they because you also have the hacker girl's father, who was one scene before he's killed
Yeah.
where he's kind of odd. It's like, which isn't necessarily an issue because you've already got loads of characters. The hacker girl is a more prominent one, and you want to make the audience like her. Have something about her to attach onto, and so you give her a short little thing with her father. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's the short little thing is not good enough. Like, you can have something that's short, but what is actually done is not enough to really endear you to him. He's annoying. Like the father's just annoying in that scene.
Yeah, it's unclear.
And when he
It's
and when he was garroted
yeah.
by the weird band, I was happy because he was. Oh, I didn't have to hear any more of his annoying dialogue anymore. You know.
um, yeah. So basically, there's this band that are trying to they're trying to basically
Well, do we actually
claim.
even know? Yeah, exactly what their relationship is with the
With the,
dessert thing or whatever.
I think they're just unrelated. I think they just wanted. I
Okay.
think the main guy just wanted to was just like a psychopath that wanted to be famous. So he was like claiming to be
Yeah.
um, part of this suicide because
Yeah.
people were calling it a suicide club and it was like ambiguous what was. And I think that
Oh, yeah, yeah, you're right. Because the suicide club thing is invented by those school kids,
yeah,
and that gets sort of spread in the
yeah,
media,
and
and
see
then
that
those guys pick up on it, which is yeah, that's why
yeah
they weren't actually involved. Yep.
yeah, and so
No, that does make sense actually, Dara.
so it's like you've got an actual cult thing going on which is not done very well. But then there's
Hmm.
also there's this like copycat suicide things which are ambiguous, which I don't know. It did.
They had potential. I think,
There is a lot of potential for this idea, but there was
yeah.
just there were medium to big
Even
sized
all of
issues.
the plot points, like all of the A through D, have potential,
You
but
could make it all fit together.
they cannot be fit in a film, at least not one of this length.
Yeah,
Because we sort of float around this idea and of actually we'll leave it for now, but we float around the idea of it being a TV show. But we'll talk about the band properly first before we get into that.
I just want to say as well, the budget was 250K, so
They did good stuff with that budget.
yeah, just the
It
writing.
looks better than the budget.
Literally, the writing is honestly, yeah,
Yes. Yeah, like I like the '90s Japanese
yeah.
aesthetic.
The thing
I've
is, yeah,
always liked it.
it's. I think if they had a bigger budget, it would have been a lot better because
Yeah.
250K and the movie's 99 minutes, right? If they could have gone for say 2 hours 10, 2 hours 20, I think they could have really like there would have still been some issues with the direction, but
If yeah.
I think everything just being a little more fleshed out, everyone giving like everything, all of the plots given. Because that's the thing, a lot of the subplots literally have two scenes. They've got the setup scene, which is often done sloppily, and then the payoff scene, which is often done incoherently. Whereas if they had a
Yeah.
bit more time, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose you've got you've got the band. They kidnap the hacker girl, and I don't know if it's her sister or just a friend, and they kill the hacker girl's father. They garrote him. They find her location. I'm assuming through her IP address, I suppose, something like that.
Something like that.
They take them to their compound,
Which is a bowling
where
alley.
yeah, yes, it is a bowler, yeah. Where they introduced to Japanese David Bowie,
Yes.
who is he has a genuinely pretty good performance,
Oh, yeah, he's great.
and he's a good singer. I'm assuming he is a singer in Japan
Yeah.
because he sings an unironically pretty good song. Like
Um,
it's a neat little scene that does not fit in this movie at all, but it is a neat little scene.
um, yeah, I really like that scene, and I like the song a lot, and I like the music in general. Actually, in the movie,
Hmm.
like the orchestral, just like
Yeah,
soundtrack
the
stuff.
music is good. Yeah, yeah,
And then also the pop songs, which sort of bookend certain parts of the movie, are good.
by Desert, the J-pop ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and is the song that guy sings? Is that one of the songs that the girls sing in the pop group? I don't even remember.
I'm not sure. I couldn't tell.
Because I feel like they should have opened the movie with the same, and then he should have sung the same song, and then like
Yeah.
because him singing, because did he sing? I feel like his song was edgier, but because it would have been cooler if he had have sung.
Yeah, his song I remember being pretty edgy, and his song incorporates English lyrics, which I don't think any of the
Yeah,
J-pop ones did.
yeah.
So I think it's a different song.
It was a good song, but it's like it would have made more sense if he had have sung one of the songs of the J-pop group, because
In his style.
in his style, because then it would
Yeah.
have, it would have that would have been like, oh, this is a callback to it, and this is like an interesting recontextualization of this song to give it a darker meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they didn't do that.
So you've got him, and he dances around smashing animals in.
Oh, I love that. That was hilarious. Okay,
that's good. It is a good scene.
That is another point of it. It's got to be. It's definitely a comedy because him like stepping on
Yeah.
the puppies and stuff was just so over the top. It was
Yeah, 'cause
hilarious.
they're in these stark white sacks, and so
Yeah.
you get the contrast of their blood just permeating through from the other side when he stomps on them,
Yeah, it's just
and
like
that's led to its most sort of terrible incarnation with there's a woman in one of them. However,
oh,
he doesn't stomp on it or anything. He gets one of his goons to sort of go inside, and you get this great shot of from
oh,
inside
yeah.
the sack of it opening up and the guy crawling in with a knife and everything. It's a really good shot.
Yeah.
And I think he rapes her whilst he's singing, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then stabs her with a knife and everything. And you've got that really great part where he sort of cuts open the bag a bit, and she sort of half claws her way out, and you sort of see her
Yeah.
face before he sort of
Yeah.
pulls her back in.
Yeah, it's an effective scene.
Again, you could have compressed characters there. Like, if you had more time, you could have set up the relationship between whoever that other girl was
Yeah.
and the hacker girl,
Yeah.
and then had that other girl be the one that was raped rather than some random third woman that they already had.
I think the best option would have been to just get rid of the friend character. I think it works
Probably.
having it being a completely random, not known character be the woman that's sort of attacked.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know.
It might have almost been too much if it had been someone that you were familiar with.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah, because if you had set up a character properly, then had that happen to them, I would want, in order for it not to feel really exploitative of how much you like that character, you would almost have to see them also sort of attempt to recover from it as well, if that makes sense. Like, you couldn't put it at the end of the story,
yeah,
which is where this scene more naturally fits. If you were going to have a character you actually liked and knew well be raped, you'd probably want to put it at the center, the middle of the story, so they could then sort of recover or
yeah.
something like that. I don't know.
I think the real weakness of the movie is the ending. Like, it's just it's just the payoff is so horrible.
It becomes completely incoherent.
Um,
And because I think we mentioned before, but like, obviously, who you think is the main character, the police officer, but does he die slightly over halfway through?
yeah,
'Cause he
basically.
kills himself when
And
his family does.
that's one of the reasons why there's so many cop characters is because they're like, oh, well, we've got to have like 3 cop characters, but one of them kills themselves. Okay, so let's have 4 cop characters,
Yeah.
and that seems to be as much thought that like went into it, basically.
Yeah. And you've got that like one of them's that bald dude with a moustache who looks like almost like an old samurai.
He
like,
looks
that's sort of
cool.
the face he gives off. He looks cool, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got the younger one who meets up with the other girl at the end. But like, what is it? The hacker girl and all that, they're put in those sacks and everything, and she manages to get onto like a terminal, like onto a computer or something.
Yeah, and then she's
Typing away. She can type blind, which I was fine with. Like,
I
you
thought
could
that was
feel
funny.
it into the computer, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's trying to send a message, and then the band come back. I don't know where they've gone or whatever, but they come back, and they actually, I liked this. They want her to send the message through.
Yeah, he wants to get caught, essentially.
Yeah, because he wants attention.
Yeah.
He's a narcissist.
Yeah, and that
That's
works.
why it works and makes sense with the character. They set up that he's obviously, even just through his appearance, he's a narcissist.
Yeah.
It's the entire motive for why they call themselves a suicide club, piggybacking off what those kids made up. They
Yeah.
want attention from the murders. And after that, the hacker girl just disappears from the story.
Yeah, she's literally not in it again.
Yep. Even though, she should be involved in the climax in some way. considering she was one of the earlier introductions. She set the police on that path, but instead you get that random girl who was hit by a boyfriend as sort of your final point of view character.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so the police arrest the band, and what is it? Do you have that scene of them being sort of on? It's a shot of the news, and they're being drug away, and these sort. What is it? I'm the Japanese Charles Manson or whatever he calls himself,
Yeah.
which is funny.
Yeah.
I've genuinely got a good laugh out of it.
Yeah. He is great, that character, honestly.
He's unironically well portrayed by the guy.
Yeah, good costume, good performance.
Yeah, the costume's good. Yeah, and then you go back to that girl who visits the fucking dessert concert.
Yeah.
And so then that's what you have. You have, because throughout the film, you see some of the characters watching them. They're very popular J-pop band. You have what are borderline intermissions in it,
Yeah.
with just little scenes of them doing the performance or whatever. And then you have a final closing one, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, I thought was a very effective closing because this J-pop band, who, as far as we figured out from this movie, are who are causing the fucking terrible sentence.
Yeah,
They're
they are the
causing
cause of.
these suicides, whether they know it or not, or whether there's some cult operating out of their
Yeah.
concerts. We don't actually know.
I wish it was
And
slightly more ambiguous.
Yeah, I would have preferred it to be slightly more ambiguous. And it's just sort of, I found it sort of genuinely chilling because what's their final message is that, all these terrible things have been going on, and so we're going to sing you a song to cheer you up.
Yeah.
And it's like, even though they'd probably be causing it themselves,
Yeah.
So I do like that ending.
Yeah. I wish he had have just walked into the concert and then it sort of cuts to. I don't know if we needed.
I'm not sure if you could smoothly get from her walking to the concert and then that final message, because I do really like the final message. It's a good thing to close on.
Yeah. Yeah,
You'd have to come up with something else to replace the scene of her getting initiated into the cult and everything.
Yeah, the thing is, that's such a bad scene.
Yeah, it is.
It's like they deliberately picked the kids because they're creepy, but then it's like, okay, what was his options? Like, have the kids be the inductees into the cult, which is, I guess, kind of creepy. But then obviously you can, like, if you just had random dudes, I don't know. They should have just had it be like a collection of random people with the inductees. Like, you could have had one kid, had like an old lady, had like a married couple, like had a few different sorts of people. Maybe that would have been more effective, I think. Than
Yeah, I suppose the idea behind having the kids as the inductees is that I suppose kids are going to find J-pop a bit more popular. Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know.
Actually, no, because in Japan they don't really do that very much, do they? With age segregated
No.
entertainment, it's something that people of all ages enjoy. So yeah,
Yeah.
I suppose they're literally just going for the creepy kid imagery. That was literally it.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because
did not
I
work.
suppose we could get onto it now, but we sort of had the idea of it would function better as a TV show. Because what you could do is because you could take it in a few different directions. You could have it that you go with the sort of supernatural element. You expand on what's suggested by the hospital scene with the nurses. That's one way to go. I'm not sure how you would tie in the J-pop band into that.
Yeah.
They could perhaps, rather than necessarily being a cause, they could still be a thematic thing. The topics of their songs could be relevant to each individual episode or something.
Yeah.
And you could keep that the supernatural aspect is a commentary on consumerism. So I think that's an attempt in this film. or just the general celebrity
Yeah.
culture of Japan or something like that.
Well, I think
And then
like
that's punctuated by these J-pop performances, but they aren't actually causing it themselves. It's some supernatural entity or spirit or something.
yeah, because like that hospital scene, it's there to sort of have the red herring that it's a ghost,
Hmm.
uh, or like something supernatural, and then
Or
it's
you could
like
even,
it is sort of supernatural at the end, but like in a way that is just it doesn't make any sense. Basically,
yeah,
it's like, oh no,
like
it's not a ghost. It's actually just something that doesn't make sense.
you could even in a TV show, you could even keep the scene with the nurses, but rather than it being you initially think perhaps that it's a allusion to a supernatural element, but you could make that security guard more important to the
Yeah,
story,
yeah, like
and
make it
go
episodic.
into how yeah, go into how he's handling it.
Yeah,
Presumably he knows those nurses fairly well. They seem to be close,
yeah,
and now they've just randomly committed suicide.
yeah,
I know he's a security guard. He would probably have certain skills. I don't know. He want to use them in some way. You know,
yeah.
he's a man that has access to a gun. Has been through an incredibly traumatic experience.
Mm,
Is seeing. He's having some sort of post-traumatic reaction. You could go a multitude of ways with someone like that who has access to a firearm.
yeah,
He could get it into his head that it is this band. You know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's a whole another element. Is that it isn't actually the band,
But
but
people,
he's sort
yeah,
of
yeah,
deranged. There's conspiracy theories about it. That it is this band, you know,
mm,
and he decides to take action on it. He's going to kill them or something. I don't know.
yeah,
And then again, you could get into celebrity culture there, their
yeah.
reactions to it.
And
With a TV show like this, because they've seeded all these ideas of things that could be interesting concepts.
yeah,
That if you do want to do all of them in one story, you probably could just pull it off in a decent sized TV show.
yeah,
You might have to do a Twin Peaks thing and have maybe 2 seasons, maybe something.
yeah,
But actually, that's a good example. Is maybe a Twin Peaks sort of style, tone sort of show
yeah. That
with a
is it.
similar
It
sort of
is.
mystery.
Yeah, it is. It was sort of Lynchian. This movie, I would
Yeah,
say, it's like certain aspects of the tone.
yeah,
It also
yeah. I
reminded
think
me of
yeah, it's like if Lynch had the idea of Twin Peaks, all of the characters, all the story, and then decided I'm gonna make this one movie.
yeah, 100-minute movie as
One,
well.
yeah, one a 100-minute movie, and I'm going to try to condense all that into it.
Yeah,
You know,
um,
and Twin Peaks is great. It's a really good show,
yeah. I mean, yeah,
and I think there is potential for a good Twin Peaks style TV show based
yeah,
on this concept and using verbatim a lot of the characters.
yeah,
And you could even take a lot of the scenes. Like, if you were to do this in a TV show, I would keep the train scene as the opening. Like, see, I'm just thinking about lost potential here. Like, if you made that now, you took the premise, you've seen how popular Squid Game is. There's an interest in, no, being serious, there's an interest in sort of Asian
yeah, yeah,
TV right now. You take these ideas, these characters, you actually flesh them out, and then you in this modern day and age, you have an opening scene where 52 schoolgirls throw themselves into the front of
yeah.
a train, and geysers of blood explode over everybody.
Oh, it'd be such a big
You know?
meme. It'd be all over.
Yeah, there's meme potential there. There's
Yeah,
normie Westerners who don't understand what Asian filmmaking is.
yeah,
Who
yeah,
don't get the tone or anything. There'd be huge potential for this to be successful, but
yeah,
you know, I need the rights. What I'm saying is,
yeah. I mean, I
make
don't
the-
know. I don't know how much they would cost. Honestly, you could probably get it for cheap.
maybe. Yeah.
There is a sequel.
It's a prequel and I forget the word for it when it's an adjacent story. There's a technical word for it.
A sidequel. That's what's
I think that's the retarded term that people use, but I think there is an actual.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. You're retarded.
Oh, whoa! It's way longer. It's probably actually not half bad. Maybe,
I do not know.
bro. It's over 2.5 hours long.
Huh.
I wonder if it's like exactly what we wanted.
Well, that director I know, like his stuff does get quite long. So what is it?
It's got better reviews than Suicide
Okay, it's
Club.
got better reviews because he's for people who might be watching. It's this guy directed a 4 hour long romantic comedy.
What's it called?
Was one of his films after this. I Love Exposure. Yeah, that's it.
Oh. Oh. Art house comedy drama.
Whatever. Yeah.
It's 4 hours long. Oh my gosh. First version was 6 hours long? What?
Yeah. So I'm assuming that this guy just doesn't realize that you can make a TV show. Like, if you want to tell a longer story, make a show.
That is so weird. It's 2009. I guess he could do that. It wasn't really a thing then.
Yeah, TV. You couldn't quite do what you could do in a film then in TV, like you can now. So.
Yeah. Now it's sort of, yeah. Dang. I am not that interested in watching that, I'll be honest. Maybe I will one day. I don't know. If I next time I get like food poisoning or something, I'll watch it. That's a real like you're sick for some reason type movie.
Oh well, if you're ever ill, then I'll accompany you on that journey. I won't make you go it alone, Flood. We will watch that 4 hour romantic comedy together.
Sounds good. Sounds good, Jack. Is there anything else to say? Suicide Club. Let me have a look at my notes. Oh,
if you want to listen to my random theories about how it could be better, then yeah.
I think we've done that.
I have more ideas.
No, I think we're done. I just wanted to say, yeah, I like the scenes where there are suicides in that. It reminded me a tiny bit of Final Destination, which again, that's like much more coherent. I mean,
well, yeah, that's got the Final Destination films have a relatively straightforward plot.
Oh yeah.
They're basically a slasher film without actual slasher character or whatever. It's just have a plot so that people can die in gruesome ways,
Yeah. I think we're done here. I think we've discussed all of this. Man, I'm tired now. All right, let's
we
wrap
figured
up.
out that Suicide Club is a masterpiece and Fight Club is garbage. Never watch it ever. Okay.
I will say this for Suicide Club: if you really like late 90s, early 2000s Japanese movies,
Yeah, you should watch it. Yeah.
it's only 100 minutes long. I would give it I wouldn't say it's like a 4 out of 10. It's like a 5, 6 out of 10, maybe on a rewatch it's a 6, but it's a 5 out of 10, which in my scale that's like not bad, honestly. That's like, yeah,
I would give it a 4.5. In terms of like actual technical quality of its writing, I'll give it a 4.5. However, I enjoyed it a decent bit. Like I give it a 7 out of 10 in terms of like enjoyment and stuff.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I guess it's fun to watch and then work out how you would do it better.
Yeah, it's a worthwhile thing. Yeah,
because it's bad in an interesting way, or its mistakes are interesting.
Yeah, it's at the very least interesting. There's a lot of neat ideas, and if you're interested yourself in telling stories, that's I think this is a genuinely worthwhile thing to break down, figure out, because it does present you with so many interesting ideas that are never quite fulfilled.
Yeah,
that it can be a good introduction to if you're trying to be creative into thinking how things can be done and should be done in terms of story.
Yeah,
it's definitely worthwhile to watch, I'd say.
I appreciate what it was sort of trying to do, but I feel like if he had another hour, it would. I honestly think if he had another hour, it would have been a better movie.
I agree, yeah.
Because it's Because he was, yeah, yeah. It was just a struggle between these things, and he only had 100 minutes, and he clearly couldn't kill his darlings and like
No.
roll characters together or.
No.
So yeah.
But yeah, I do think the ultimate form of this story would be a show. But yeah, you could get a pretty decent end product, I reckon, if you got another hour. You could get something pretty good there.
Yeah.
You would have to still cut stuff,
Yeah.
but you could get a lot of stuff that he wanted in, and it'd be pretty coherent, I reckon.
Yeah. All right. Well. Yeah, that's everything. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.